Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sound of the Loons presented by Allina Health. What a fabulous day. The sun is shining. I'm assuming the teams are training outside. That's always a good sign. It's like we had spring and then winter and spring again. And I get to be joined by the head coach of the U19, the under-19 academy team, Fanendo Adi. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
I should say, I mean, I guess I should preface your resume. You're currently the head coach of the U19s, but when we talk about where you've come from and what you've accomplished in your career, we could go back a long ways in sort of the stellar nature of your path and what you've been able to accomplish. But first and foremost, just tell me the draw for you to come back to Minnesota United as a coach, and the draw just to get in coaching in general, considering your fantastic career as a player.
Thanks for having me again. As a soccer player, I always wanted to, remain in soccer afterwards. And, I give it a good thought of what am I going to do after my career, and, just having thought about it, spent time thinking about these last 3 years. Obviously, when your career is slowly winding up, you start within yourself that, oh yeah, the time is coming and you have to start thinking about something else. So when that time came, I was thinking about different things, speaking to Sean McCauley, who is my mentor, and speaking to Caleb, speaking to my friends, just people around me who are in the league, just to hear how they navigated their retirement situation and how they became sort of going into coaching and all of that. So, these guys were very helpful, especially Sean. Sean was super helpful because I called him like a lot just to get insight on, how to go about life and things like this. So it didn't come as a surprise to me because even while playing, I was more like a leader on any team I played. I was very vocal in the locker room, just trying to bring people along and together. So I think that gave me the insight in going into coaching. And luckily enough for me, Minnesota gave me a good opportunity. Adrian was very helpful in giving me the opportunity to come here on an internship with the camp. So that was really, really helpful. And, learned a lot from Ken, learned a lot from Sean, and just, going about asking, even I walk around, I ask many questions. I ask Amos Miggy questions. So I just try to get as much ideas from everybody, who has been in soccer longer than I've been, and, just getting their insight about how it works and all of this really helped me. But, Minnesota was just great in giving me the opportunity.
When you look at your career, did you think that this was where you're going to end up? You just said towards the tail end of your career, you were a leader on the field, you're trying to bring guys along. And there are some people that just have that kind of a brain, sort of a coaching brain, a coach on the field. Not everybody is meant to be a coach, so even early on in your career, in your youth days, was that sort of how you operated? Did you see yourself in that way on the pitch?
I think I would say when I was a lot younger, I was a little bit different because I wanted the ball all the time. So, I just had Zarek in training the other day with my U19s, and he was telling them a story about Fanendo Adi, that Fanendo Adi was younger. He was telling them how if you don't pass Fanendo Adi the ball in training, you are in trouble with Fanendo Adi. So
that's the negative, right? You have a former teammate from the Portland Timbers now on Minnesota United that can spill all the beans and give all the dirt, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he was telling them that, oh, you have a really good coach and stuff like this, how Fanendo was very aggressive. If I don't cross the ball with Fanendo Adi, it would be a whole problem. So everyone just had to give Fanendo Adi the balls. But, that was why I was able to score goals, because I needed the ball. But, in all honesty, growing up, I've always wanted to remain in soccer. And towards the tail end of my career, I started seeing myself more vocal, more getting into, even after games, I want to ask the coach, like when the coach makes a change, I'll go on just me and the coach. I say, why did you make that change? Because maybe I'm seeing something different as a player. And I was lucky enough where coaches kind of explained to me, like, yeah, this is the reason behind this change. So, I kind of grew up into it. And I say for me, it's just a pleasure to be here for sure.
Can you go way back and talk to us about your upbringing a little bit? Born in Nigeria, like what was your upbringing like, and what was that soccer culture like for you, and within your family and your community?
I would say my upbringing was pretty normal, very traditional. In Africa, especially in Nigeria, we very like parents are very hard on their kids. You have to do the right things all the time. But I would say I was a little bit of a strong head, to be honest, because I remember my parents punishing me a lot because whenever they send me on errand, I don't go. I just go playing soccer. But I schooled back in Nigeria, did my high school there, and was able to also to come out with a computer science degree from Nigeria. So my upbringing, I grew up in a very modest family. My football career path is very strange, but I would say favored, and I was kind of lucky because obviously I played with very, very talented players who, even while growing, I knew these guys were way better than me, but and I think just what set me apart from them was discipline because I really, really wanted it. I wanted to excel. I wanted to play soccer. So about 9, 12 years old, I started like really, really like going into soccer. And, after I played, I represented my school in soccer as we call them the leader of the games in our high school. So I was the leader of games in my school. And immediately graduating from high school, I had an opportunity with an agent who came into Nigeria from UK, and he was running a tryout in Lagos, a big city. So I had to travel all the way, and there was nowhere I could travel because I was super young, and I lived with my sister, and my mom, and so I didn't know what to do. So I had to connive with my sister. Hey, I've got this tryout, but if my parents know that I'm going for soccer trial, they would say, no, you can, that's not even possible. I was even too young. So I told my sister, we sat and we made a plan. So we kind of lied to my parents that I was going to go back to the village to see my grandmother. And we told my parents that, yeah, I'm going back to visit my grandmother. And the next day, just me and my sister knew what was happening. So I had to travel all the way from Benue to Lagos. And luckily enough for me, that's why I say my career was really, really like favored in a sense, because on getting to Lagos, they told us the trial was meant to be 60 kids, but on getting there, a boy from the village coming to the big city, I saw over 400 boys, and they were looking for just 10 players. So, I slept in the guy that came from UK, an English guy, Nigerian parents and all of that, but born there and lived there and all his business there. So the next morning we went to the field. I was very nervous and all of that, but I just say, okay, I just got to do what I got to do. And my cleats were not the right cleats. I was shabbily dressed and all of this, but on getting on the field, I just played 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, he said I should come out. And he asked me, why do I miss the chance? I said, I don't know, and stuff like that. So to cut a long story short, after the trial, I was one among he just selected 5 players, and I was one among the 5. So from there, my career, I stayed in Lagos for another 6 months. Then my parents had to know that I lied to them and all of this. And
wait, it took 6 months for that to come to fruition?
Yeah. So I had to go back home, but then I had to leave. So when I got back home, I told them the truth, and they were like, oh, no, you can go and stuff like this. And yeah, long story short, I ended up going to Slovakia. I went to Slovakia at 16, almost 17. I spent a year in their youth academies there, and then immediately I turned 18. That's when I went into the first team. But my career path went from Slovakia to Ukraine, to Denmark, and then to the United States. But it was a journey for sure. It was. I remember when I started in Slovakia, I could say in the entire city I was the only foreigner in that city. It was a city of about 60, 70,000 people, this trenching. And I remember even just walking on the street, everybody's like turning and looking at you like you're something different, But this was in early 2009, 2010. So people were not used to different people. And that was the difference. But, the career has been steadily progressing. And, I'm just happy to where the level I've come to.
When you came to the United States with the Portland Timbers, then what was that like for you? Because did you feel a little more well prepared for it? Because you had already traveled all these places, you had all these experiences as a young player and a young person. Forget just being, a player. Did you feel like coming over to the United States that you were ready for this? This was a moment for you. Did you want that move? That because it was originally a loan, yes, with the Portland Timbers.
Yes, it was. I wasn't looking for the move because I was in Copenhagen playing Champions League, having played against Real Madrid, and that's a big change. Obviously, I knew about MLS soccer, but I've never watched an MLS game. So when Portland Timbers came for me with a loan and stuff like that, I spoke to the club. They were like, "Yeah, we'll let you make the decision." So I had to just speak to people around me, and it was a loan for 6 months, but then it was an opportunity for me to also to play and to see the country as well, also knowing that I speak English. So that was a big relief on my path, knowing that I could speak English with other people so they could understand me. So when I came here, just being around was a lot easier. Obviously, people speak English. I can go to a restaurant on my own. I can walk around. I can see people like me. So that was a huge difference maker for me. And I think after 3 weeks, Portland Timbers said they want to sign me, and if I was willing and stuff, like I had no option than to say yes. So it was a big change, but a change that brought me into the right direction.
So how much time did you get to spend with your family or back with your family throughout this entire journey since you very first left Nigeria and you left to go to Slovakia? How much time have you been able to still be a part of what they have going on, or them being a part of what you have going on? How easy or difficult has that been?
I think the world right now is a very small village. I would say when you talk about early 2000 or 2010, thereabout, it was a little bit difficult. Like in Slovakia, then even if you're going to make a FaceTime call, it's like you got to go to a specific location to do all of that. So I think when I came here, it was around 2014. So the world has really, really moved on in technology. So the idea of FaceTiming, video, WhatsApp chatting, and all of this became a norm even in Africa. So even if our parents didn't, or my sister didn't have the money, I could send them money like, okay, buy data and have it on your phone, or I could buy a phone and send it to her, just to call me once in a while. But the good thing with me is all the way from Slovakia, when I started, the clubs has been really, really helpful because they know I was young, coming from a different place. So what was inserted in my contract was the ability for them to sponsor me to go back home at least twice a year. So they gave me that option, which was very, very helpful. So I had the ability to go back if I want twice a year, but mostly I was going back once a year. But I think technology made life a lot easier. It's different coming from Africa and having that mentality of, coming from a very poor background, seeing that people are suffering, and then you have it in your head like, hey, this is my opportunity to make it. So that energizes you, that gives you that a little bit of a spark, a bite that, yeah, I got to make it. I got to make it for my people. I got to make it for myself. So I think having that at the back of my head, just gave me the extra push I needed in that times.
Have you been able to carry that mentality and some of those life lessons that you've learned as a human being and as a soccer player to what you do now? I mean, even with the U19s, but even going back during your playing career, and you spent time, a long time with Portland Timbers, and had a lot of success at MLS Cup and Columbus Crew and Cincinnati. What have you been able to carry those lessons to some of the players in and around you, and especially with the 19s, because, not everybody in the United States has it easy, but not necessarily the same type of a path that you took. So how do you instill some of those values?
I think, when Amos let me know that, yeah, they're willing to give me the job, I was really happy because I told him before during the interviews that I have something to offer those kids that I don't think anybody has, and that is not being proud or being proud about it. But the truth is, I came from a very different background, and I see how we fought to survive, how we wanted to make it in this life, and I think that's a specialty I have that a lot of people don't have, and that experience of traveling around the globe. The other day, I told my group that. at 21, I was playing Champions League. They were looking at me and like, really? I'm like, yes, I do. So 21, 22, I was playing Champions League. So they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yes, I did. But, so that gives them extra motivation. And I tell them that it's not just coming here, kicking the ball. It involves a lot of things. The discipline has to be there. Your desire, I want to play soccer. You have to love the game. Not just looking at the fame, the money, and the things, the extra things it brings. Definitely, it's going to bring all of those things. And with those things also comes a lot of pressure to perform, pressure to hold yourself at a high standard. Not that we're not going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes, but just the ability to within yourself, say, I love this game. I want to make it. I'm going to do everything I can within my power to excel in this career. Is what is going to set you apart from the next player. And the 19 really, we have a lot of good players. I think I've pushed and pushed and pushed, but I tell Cam most of the time when I speak with him about the boys, I recommend boys to come train with him, and luckily for me, he accepts that and he's willing to see them play. And I was extremely emotionally overjoyed when I saw Cage and Leo go to play with the first team, and Leo came out as the best player for the first week. And I think Amos was texting me middle of the night, and he was like, "Oh, how do your boys did so well?" And I just sent him a text, but I'm not surprised. He might see that like maybe a little bit strong statement, but I said I'm not surprised because I know how far those boys have been working, how well they have been working, the desire they want to make it. So, and this is what I told them, like, it's not just being in the U19 now. You have the ability, if you do well in the U19, I can recommend you and you can go there and play well, and the whole country sees those players. And, that's what we want to see. We want to see the boys progress and not just be at the level where they are with the 19s, but even if they end up going to college, they are good representative of Minnesota, and that's what Minnesota stands for, to be better, even when you are not within the club system.
Well, that's a good point, because 19s is a tricky age, and you know this because you played and were playing professional at a much younger age, but the United States has such a different path in general with college, and of course we have MLS Next Pro and the twos and these academies now, which are fantastic, but the 19s are kind of this tricky age. So how do you still instill this belief in them that there's this opportunity to, clearly go on professionally, but if you maybe go and decide to play college, that's okay too. And then you may still end up, you get drafted, whatever it might be, that your path doesn't have to be linear. Like if you go on this one path and it takes a turn somewhere along the way, it's okay. Like you'll still end up where you need to be at the end of the day. How do you do that with that age group?
The truth about the whole thing is, and this is me saying the truth, I'm not very used to the academy system. I've never been in the system and how it works here. So when I got into the system, and luckily for me, I did work with Noel Queen a little bit.
Yes.
So, and Noel has been really, really helpful, because sometimes I go to him like, no, I don't want to talk to no parents. Like, just go talk to the parents, So because I don't know what to tell them. And luckily for me, Amos also did a good job with bringing in Alex, who has been in the college system for over 20 years. So, Noel has been just tremendous with helping me with like, hey, this player, this is just how you deal with him. And I go into the office, I just knock on his door like, hey, this player is having this. I don't know what to tell him. And he's just there, and so I'm so happy that I have all these people around me to just help me navigate the situation. So Noah has been tremendously helpful with just talking to the boys, like when we travel, and, sometimes I don't even know what to say, because I'm thinking more at a higher level where, the coach is like, you are there as a player, I'm there as a coach, and, you come and you do what you have to do as a player, and we go back home. But, in the academy level, it's different. You have to be there emotionally for the kids, physically and otherwise, so you're acting like not just as a coach, you're acting like almost like a parent to these kids when they are in the environment here. So I would say Noel has just been very, very helpful in this area, and Alex now comes in to give me like so much ideas, even when we're playing the game and I'm seeing something and he's also seeing something, and he comes to me and say, this is what I'm seeing, and we just relate ideas and things work out. But I would say Noah has been very tremendous in helping with this other aspect that I'm not very familiar with.
So what's your strongest attribute as a coach? Yeah, I know you can tell me what your strongest attribute is as a player. What's your strongest attribute? What's your style? What's your philosophy as a coach?
Yeah, my philosophy is you have to work hard to gain whatever you want to get, the results. And especially at the youth level, I mean, I've not been here for so long, but from what I see is when those boys are fit, you just have to give them the basic principles and ideas and concepts of play, how you want them to play. And you don't complicate it, because when you complicate it, and you just make everything confusing for them. And I've learned that you just stick to something when it's working, don't just deviate from it because maybe you lost the game. Like we lost 2-1 against Gallagher last Saturday and Sunday. And this was a game, obviously tough conditions and all of that, but we all played on the same pitch. But we kept over 75% of the ball. And we created so many chances, obviously due to conditions we can't control the ball. Someone is running with the ball and suddenly the ball gets stuck in the snow and things like this. And so when I see that we kept the ball for over 75% and we created so many chances, some came off, some didn't come off the right way. But, the basic idea of, okay, I say Gallagher stays narrow. We have to now spread out, just keep the ball on one angle. And when we switch, we have to now go quickly on the side where we switch. And we saw exactly those concepts on the video afterwards when we watched the video. And Alex was even telling me yesterday that we did everything right. It's just, and, so when you go through that kind of game, the boys were very disappointed. This is a game they should win, but we give up a penalty in the last minute. So, our philosophy of the club is we are going by what Adrian is doing with the first team and second team, which is basically stay within the 4-3-3, stay narrow, stay compact through the middle. And then when we have the ball, we spread out, we try to use the wing wide to get the balls in the box. But I think also with them going to train and play with the second team, a few of them now, they know that this is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to complicate it. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. Play from the back. Wingers stay wide, invert when you have to invert, but mostly open up the pitch.
So now when you have an opportunity to watch the first team, pay attention to what's going on in this league, because I know you're incredibly busy with what you have going on, but clearly it's sort of all interconnected. It's a domino effect. 2 questions. First one is, what's your thought and feel and opinion on the growth of this league just since you arrived and where it's at now? And then also, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit, get your scouting report on Minnesota United Seattle coming this weekend, because you had your fair share of games against Seattle and sort of what that's like and, what that environment's like, what that competition is like, and just your overall thoughts on the MLS and how it's evolved.
I think MLS has grown a lot. I mean, from 2014 to now, the amount of players that have been able to come into the league has just been impressive. The teams that have been able to, the new expansions have been impressive. Look at what St. Louis is doing. That is just incredible. Look at what LAFC did. Look at what Atlanta did. So, the league has grown so much that you can say we are the older generation league or whatever, the league for the older people. Now it's a league for young people. Every team has players that can go to Europe and play in any team. We have players in MLS that can go anywhere and play in any of the leagues in the world. So I think, and also looking at the number of, I think about, was it 32 players in the last World Cup or something like this? This is
crazy, yes.
Yeah, this is impressive statistics for the league. And, the league is just going to keep growing, and I say it's going to explode. Just the World Cup is coming here, and, so there's a lot that MLS is going to achieve in the nearest future. I think more teams are going to come. The league is going to keep getting better. Better players are still going to be coming in, and players are going to come in at their prime. Not like,
it's not a retirement league anymore.
Yeah, no more retirement league. Now, if you come and you are not fit, you are not doing the right things, you can play. Look at Pilo came and he can't last for so long because the league is not that easy. It's not that easy.
He did have really nice hair, though.
The league for sure is a tough league. It's not an easy league. But going back to Seattle, all I can tell you, Seattle, is that those people hate me. They hate me. I remember I went with when I did internship, we came for a little bit. We traveled to Seattle for second team game with the Seattle Tacoma or whatever, their second team.
Yes.
And the people were booing me. I'm like, wait, you guys are booing? I'm no longer playing. So they were booing me, but I mean, Seattle has always been a good team. You have to give them that. They've been a successful team in the last 5 years. But one thing with them is, if you go there and as long as you can stick in the game, don't concede early, you are good to go. The most important thing playing in Seattle is don't concede early, because I think when you concede early, then it becomes a problem, because, they've had a good fan base that follows them and try to support them, especially at home. And knowing that they just lost to my former team, Portland team.
They didn't just lose; they got smoked.
Oh, they got smoked.
It might not be a good time to be facing Seattle.
they got trounced, man. They got smoked, like, for real.
Yes.
But so I don't know, but it's a game that we just I think we just need to go there and stick in and just try to stick into the game until we get a goal. And I think the longer we stick in the game, the better chance we have. And we try not to concede early. That's very important.
Well, I know Adrian Heath has always said, when he's talked about his coaching career after his playing career, and he always felt like coaching is the next best thing to playing. It's the closest you can really get to the game without being on the pitch as a player. And it even looks like Adrian sometimes tries to get on the field as a player on that sideline, But would you agree? I mean, is this like, are you content and happy with where you're at, and you feel at this moment fulfilled with what you're doing, and that coaching is the next best thing to playing?
Absolutely, I agree with that. I always, I think I've told a few of them this, but I say the best feeling I get right now as a coach is when I implement an idea in training and I see the execution in the game. That brings me absolute joy. And I think we've scored some goals that I really, really celebrate. And my boys are looking at me like, oh my gosh, he celebrates. But I'm like, so I explain to them that the reason why I'm celebrating this goal more than that goal, the other goal, is because we did exactly that. We thought about this in training. We tried to implement it in training, and now we executed it perfectly in the game. And when you see that, it gives you a lot of joy. So I definitely understand what he's talking about. And it's just a good feeling, especially if you love the game and you want to see, at our youth level, we want to see the boys progress and become something bigger in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I tell people all the time, and we've been really lucky to do these podcasts every week and try to focus on the academies, the twos, because I just think that the evolution of this league with the academies in Minnesota now just sort of getting into that game. Some of these teams and these clubs like Portland have been doing it for a long time, but I think that for people to get out and witness what you guys are doing at the academy level and the twos level is so important, because we can all talk about the pros. We can all talk about the first team. But I think to really see kids their age, what they can aspire to at the next level, and that whole concept, if you can see it, you can be it. The U15s, the 17s, 19s, and then it's the twos and the first team. Like, I just think that it's such a joy to watch the progression of these players and hear their stories. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story. We could talk for another half hour, just about your career. But I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, and I'll let you get back to work, and hopefully you guys are training outside.
It's a pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me. And anytime, I'm willing and ready to talk about the academy boys. I think the 19s, especially, they're really, really good kids. When we play games, sometimes I ask them, where are your parents? Why are they not here? Where's your sister? Where's your brother? Invite them to come and watch the game to see how good you're doing, because, that also will give them motivation. So this is me calling them as a coach, when we're playing games and we're at home and it's nearby, just come out and support the home boys. They're doing really good, and they look really, really good now. So it would be a good time to come watch them, and even, put a pressure on the second team, put a pressure on Kyndra. Hey, these kids are doing well. They have to be involved. They should be involved. So, but it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks a lot.
I love it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Stay tuned, everybody. We got segment number 2 coming up. Alexi Lalas is going to join me to talk a little bit about US Open Cup coming up and just the overall state of the league and the men's national team. That's coming up next. As the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United, Allina Health is focused on keeping our Loons in top condition. And with expertise in orthopedics, sports medicine, heart care, and more, Allina has the team to keep your family in the game too. The experts at Allina Health take the time to get to know you as a whole person, helping you achieve wellness for your mind, body, and spirit. It's an altogether better kind of healthcare. Learn more at allinahealth.org. All right, welcome back, everybody. Segment number 2 of Sound of the Loons. And now we get to transition a little bit into, we were just talking about Seattle coming up for Minnesota United, but we're going to transition even beyond that to the US Open Cup. And I get to have the pleasure of the one and only Alexi Lalas joining me. I don't have quite the introduction that you have for Mossy on your podcast. I don't know, maybe I should have done better with that.
No, it was perfect. I loved it. I always love speaking with you. I love the work that you do. We've known each other for many years, and I'm excited to talk about this Loons team that's really kind of interesting here in 2023 with what's going on the field and off the field, and obviously as it relates to the games coming up. So not a problem. Fire away.
Yeah, no shortage of conversation around this Minnesota United team. And I don't think anybody thought, and we don't need to spend the whole time on it, but I don't think anybody thought the conversation would be about Emmanuel Reynoso not being here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we thought that going into the season, even from my standpoint now that I don't work directly with the club, but that was going to be a real thing. But what is your take on the 2023 Minnesota United team? It's, they started off red hot. They've hit a little blip and a little bump in the road here, but overall, I know it's still early.
I mean, look, it's lemonade out of lemons, right? And so what Adrian Heath has done, I think, deserves a tremendous amount of attention and praise because, while it's, a team is a collection of individuals, the reality is when you have not just a designated player, but use whatever word, talisman, and certainly a star, not show up and all of that entails, that's a problem. That throws you for a loop if you're a head coach, if you're a team that is planning for the year. And yet, like I said, they have, they haven't whined about it. They've been, as honest and open as they possibly can. But a lot of us on the outside are still kind of sitting around scratching our heads going, this is kind of strange. But they've gotten on with the business. And, the depth, I think, has come into play. And also, I think there's been kind of a rallying. And it's not anything against Reynoso or anything. I think everybody on the team understands how important he is. But from playing in teams, sometimes that ego and that hubris that you have can be channeled and harnessed in a good way. And I think that's what we have seen. Now, I don't think that Minnesota is necessarily elite, but they're hanging around and they're hanging around in a good place. And, if and when he comes back or they decide to go in a different direction, it'll only make them that much better that they have kind of gone through this difficult and strange period and still, for now, come out the other side being a team that is more competitive than I think you or I would have, or a lot of people would have looked at it in the beginning of the season. If you just said they don't have this player, a lot of people said, well, that is a big, big loss and one that is going to affect them from a standings perspective and a performance perspective. And it really hasn't.
Yeah. And I think they're fortunate in the sense that they have a ton of depth in the midfield, which is a bonus. We all know that there isn't a quote like for like substitution for Emmanuel Reynoso, but they've been able to accomplish a lot of things without him, whether it's been Robin Lod playing there or tucking other guys inside or playing with 2 forwards or whatever it might be. But I do think that you hit it on the head. And I remember trying to ask, I think it was Michael Boxall a couple of weeks ago, did this sort of galvanize the group? Did it bring everybody together, knowing that every question for the first how many ever months was about him and how are you going to move on with how do you do this? How do you do this? He's had this many touches on the ball, this many successful passes, key passes, whatever it might be. But the players and the coaching staff have just sort of said, we got to go with what we got. And it's more galvanized the group. And you can probably understand that as a former player.
Yeah. If I try to put myself in that locker room, and I would, it would ruffle my feathers a little bit to constantly have to talk to them. I'd understand why, but that would manifest then on the field and saying, well, screw you. We're not all about one player. And as a matter of fact, we can, and again, I don't know the dynamics behind the scenes, but in a certain way, whatever is going on, he's abandoned the team and left them hanging here in the lurch here. And that for, and there could be legitimate, I have no, again, I don't know what's going on, and if there's legitimate reasons, fine, but still the best laid plans, right, kind of just blew up there. And I think the coaching staff and I think the players deserve a tremendous amount of credit for hanging around and being a team. Again, not an elite team, but listen, we watched El Tráfico this weekend, and the Galaxy right now would kill or die just to have a gritty, raw type of performance that gets them points, that gets them a win. And it doesn't have to be beautiful when it comes to the Loons. And I'm not saying they have played completely ugly soccer, but they recognize that this is a season where they're going to have to grind, and that's okay. They're good with that. As a matter of fact, they're very, very good at doing that. And the sexiness will be there at different times, and who knows, the sexiest may come in later on. But for now, just hanging around and grinding through these games, I think that it's a good look for them, and I think it will ultimately serve them well for a base going forward.
Well, and speaking of that base, I mean, and this grind, this is going to be a long season. This is a lot of games. And every season, I feel like we say that. But when you throw in the League Cup there in the middle of it, and then, of course, we have the US Open Cup, which we're going to hit on here, is the depth and the grind is going to be a real thing for every club, especially if you're missing your number 10. Now, there's other teams that have suffered season-ending injuries already to key players that, they're not going to have any sympathy. They're not taking out the little violin, and they're not feeling bad for anybody at this point, and that's kind of the nature of the beast with this league. But when you look at Minnesota United, they have Seattle on the road this weekend. They've come off back-to-back losses, but then next week you start US Open Cup play already, which is just a different animal in balancing the roster and the schedule, much like CCL games midweek, but different in the US Open Cup. When you look at what US Open Cup has done for this league, how do you view the competition and the way it's structured still? What do you view US Open Cup means to MLS?
Well, first off, it's a piece of history. It's a piece of American soccer history. And this has nothing to do with MLS. This is all of that soccer history. And I know, we have our soccer wars and we fight amongst ourselves at different times. But the reality is that there is a long and incredibly robust American soccer history, if you care to actually go back and research it and know about it. And it's incredibly, like I said, interesting and entertaining. And this is part of that history. And it, sometimes it doesn't get the attention I think that it deserves. It doesn't get the funding necessarily that it deserves, but it is an opportunity in a world in which we don't have promotion, relegation, and that type of competitive movement up and down. This is an opportunity for those Cinderella stories. This is an opportunity for leagues that, while maybe they are, in name Division II, Division III, they feel they want to pump themselves up and push their chest out and bang on their chest and say, hey, we are here. We need to be noticed. And this is a wonderful opportunity. And we see it year after year after year. And I know there's usual suspects, and teams like MLS, with the amount of talent that they have and the money that they spend, have an advantage. But for example, the Loons game against Detroit City FC is going to be in Detroit, right?
Yep.
So that in and of itself is wonderful. And I know there is some romance to it and some nostalgia to it, but I think that's part of the excitement and the allure of this particular tournament. And you mentioned all the other tournaments that are going on. A soccer player in 2023 is going to play a lot of different types of tournaments and a lot of different types of games. And you got to be able to navigate that as a player and as a coach. And so, that's important. But this is an opportunity to win silverware for whether it's a MLS team or a USL team or any of the teams that are involved. This is an opportunity to win silverware. It's got the carrot of playing internationally in terms of CCL, another tournament, by the way, that you can get into. And then obviously the prestige and the history. And you need look no further than someone like Detroit City FC, having beat MLS teams in the past, by the way, at Kenworth in Detroit at their home venue. So this is not going to be easy. It never is. It is, for some of these teams, their biggest game in terms of making a statement for the individual players. It's a storefront window type of situation, because I think the back and forth between MLS and USL is going to increase going forward. We don't see a lot of it, but I think it's going to increase going forward because there's a lot of talent there. And if you can mine that and you can, find ways to do that and go back and forth the opposite direction, I think there's a business to be had there that's only going to get better.
Well, when you talk about Detroit City FC, and we should hit on it, your history and your connection with them. Can you elaborate a little bit? You know, I were doing it before I started recording here, but
Sure.
being a Detroit native and sort of what your connection is with Detroit City and why you chose to get involved.
So I grew up in Detroit. I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit and playing in, youth soccer and travel teams and orange peels and juice boxes at halftime. So it is my home city. I have, even though I live in Los Angeles, Detroit always lives inside you, the good and the bad. And when it comes to the good, what Detroit City FC has done has been wonderful for the city, for the community, and for the sport. And, it started out as a very, very small enterprise, and they've built it into this USL team. And what they have done with the stadium, but also what they have done with the brand. And keep in mind that, this is one of the few, soccer ventures that exist there. And so I wanted to support it. And so from afar, I was supporting it and watching the games and, wearing the gear and all that kind of stuff. But then, they did this whole cash call type of thing where they raised money and you were able to buy a piece of the club and actually be an owner. Now, I am absolutely a minority owner along with a couple thousand other people that are. I don't make any of the rules and I don't make any of the decisions ultimately when it comes to Detroit City FC on my own. And certainly we have input. But, it's just a little piece of this team and therefore a piece of the city that I love so much and supporting a team that I know is doing good things and hopefully getting bigger and better each and every year on the field and the things that they do, whether it's coming up against the Loons or anybody else in US in the Open Cup or in the week to week type of experience that people have. Trevor James, the head coach right now, the Loons are coming up against a Detroit team right now that's struggling. Has not had a great beginning to this season. So this might be a respite for the Detroit team to say, all right, let's put the league out of our mind right now and really concentrate on the Open Cup. So they're going to get an absolute game. And as I said before, MLS teams have gone into Detroit before and lost. And so it's an intimidating environment. It's a wonderful environment. I think it's a very scaled back type of environment, but it's incredibly colorful and exciting and passionate and discerning in terms of the fan base that they have there. And I think people are going to like it. In this day and age where we have these beautiful stadiums and these brand new stadiums and the 20,000 types of scene, this is kind of a throwback. But in that, I think I think the players will really appreciate the trip.
Well, I know last year when Minnesota United played at Forward Madison, and it's the same concept. It's this awesome venue, kind of plopped down in some buildings. It doesn't seat the 20,000, but the vibe and the energy. And this is their moment to shine. And I'm not saying that in any sort of a negative light, but we all know what it's like to sort of be, and we've seen it year after year of these lower division teams, USL teams, however we want to phrase it, beat MLS teams time and time again. I mean, Union Omaha came here and beat Minnesota United last year, and Minnesota United ends up signing Ryan Giba, who played for Union Omaha, and now he's on the roster. So there is this opportunity. Adrian Heath loves to play underdog, but this is one of those moments he can't play underdog. This is the opportunity for Detroit City FC to go out and prove themselves and prove these guys to prove that they can play at this level with MLS caliber players and teams. And that's a motivation in and of itself.
Yeah, and if you take Minnesota United, even with the money that they spend and the stars that they have, the talent that they have, the depth that they have, the resources that they have, they should beat Detroit. But this is one game, right? So if they played 10 times, I think Minnesota would win the majority of them. But this is one game, and anything can happen. And to your point, the motivation for the players is at an all-time high in these types of games. And, the motivation for recognition and credibility of the fan base, because this is the big bad MLS and everything that all the baggage that comes with. And, there's context to this where MLS at a certain point a few years ago tried to come into Detroit and it didn't end up working out with the ownership and, the infighting that goes on between existing teams there. And if MLS is going to come in and all that. So all of that type of stuff bubbles to the surface when these types of games happen. And it makes for wonderful entertainment. Like you said, it makes for a wonderful, passionate type of environment for the players and the fans. And then there's all these other narratives and these stories and this drama that is kind of playing out around this, around the actual game. And it's fun to watch. I enjoy the tournament first and foremost, just watching it. And we're able to watch it. But in any big tournament, you love to see these Cinderella stories, and you love to see the the slayers of the dragons and of the big, powerful, all-encompassing types of teams when it comes to MLS. And right now, the big dogs are MLS, and it doesn't always work out that way. Just because you spend more money, just because you have more talent on paper, when that whistle blows, as you know, things can change in a hurry.
Well, we saw that with Austin, didn't we, earlier this season? I mean, and that is why you play the game. I don't know. Was it Herm Edwards that said that back in the day? It's like a 16 beating a 1 in the NCAA tournament. I mean, the passion, the energy, the adrenaline, and that's why we love sports. It's because you truly never know what can happen. And I think that the hype that will happen around this game, especially for Detroit City FC, and then for the MLS teams that are in this tournament facing these USL teams or whoever it might be, is like, there's a real pressure there to come out and perform. And then what kind of a battle does that play in your head, even as a staff, about what team you're playing, what competition you have, coming up the next week in an MLS? What do you have the week before? Who do you put out there? I mean, there's all sorts of kind of strategy that go into it, actually.
It's also, MLS players will have been spoiled in terms of the resources that they have, in terms of the places that they play, in terms of the travel, in terms of all of that kind of stuff. And you get and play in some of these places. And look, don't get me wrong, USL has some wonderful environments and some wonderful venues. And wonderfully, luxurious types of situations, but it's not necessarily on the level of some of these places when it comes to MLS. And so you get into these places. I mean, you're going to go to Hamtramck, Michigan, and you're going to play in this, this refurbished stadium. And they've done a wonderful, wonderful job, but it's not going to be like playing in a lot of the MLS stadiums. And I'm sure there will be complaints about, this is, the field's like this, and it's not the greatest surface, and this and that. But that's part of the magic. That is part of what you are up against. And it's also part of, a lot of times in MLS, we talk about parity and manufactured parity. Well, within this tournament, I love the fact that, the home teams, if their stadium lives up to a certain standard, are able to host the games if they want to host the games, because there's a financial benefit that they get, but there's also the cachet of hosting, this big bad MLS team in often cases that is coming into your market, and you get to host them and you get to show them your type of experience. And if you use it to your advantage, it can be that proverbial 12th man. And if it ends up happening, whether it's the fans or whether it's the environment that you create, it's really fun to see. And again, it goes back to what I said about the incredible history that has existed over 100 years, but also that exists right now. And we focus a lot of times so much on what's happening with MLS, but there is incredible things that are going on and off the field when it comes to professional soccer with all of the leagues, and whether it's USL or NWSL or all the different acronyms that we have out there and all of the different leagues out there. It's professional soccer. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's difficult, but these are men and women each and every day that are working to make it better within their communities, within their cities, and provide an environment that people want to pay money in terms of going to see soccer. And I'm all for that.
Well, and before we switch gears to two teams that do have all the resources available to them in the men's and women's national team, talk about the growth of this game in this country. We just talked about specifically USL and PSL. I mean, we could go down, as you said, the list of acronyms, USL 1, 2, all these different things. But since you've been around the sport and in this country, even just the growth of MLS and WUSA, I mean, all WPS, all the women's professional leagues that have transcended and changed over time. What do you make of where this is at right now? And could you ever have imagined that this is the evolution that it's made?
I mean, look, I played before we were born back in the 1900s. I was running around this, this crazy Wild West, stark, barren wasteland that was American soccer. And I mean, look, I used to come up to Blaine, Minnesota, right? To, and play in tournaments there and do all that kind of stuff. But there were just little pockets, and those pockets have multiplied. And the landscape today, as I sit here on Tuesday, April 18th, 2023, talking to you, is just dramatically different than what I grew up in. And I love it. I love that there is a generation right now that gets up each and every day, and they have all of these incredible stadiums. They have all these leagues. They're able to watch every league and every team on television just with the click of a button. They have incredible coaching. They have, the infrastructure available to, I mean, we're sending players now to Europe that haven't even played a minute yet in MLS. That's how, the scouting network that's going, all that kind of stuff didn't exist back when I was running around. So that warms the cockles of my redheaded American heart to see how far we have come in a really relatively short period of time. And I know we kick ourselves often for what we haven't done or what we aren't, but we also have to pat ourselves on the back for how far we have come in a really short period of time. And we've made incredible strides. Now, you don't rest on your laurels, and you recognize that there's still plenty of problems. It's certainly not perfect. It is La Cosa Nostra. It is our thing, warts and all, and we got to continue to get better. But as the saying goes, you come a long way, baby. And American soccer has, and it's really interesting and unique and distinct. And look, whether it's up there in Minnesota, there are American soccer fans that look at the world and look at themselves through the lens of soccer. And the way that they talk, the way that they dress, the way that they act, the way that they see themselves, like I said, the way they see the world, the way they see their community is informed by soccer. And that is awesome. And it's all above ground. It's not niche. It's not underground. And as I said, I think the American soccer fan is the most passionate, is the most educated, and is the most discerning out of necessity, because we have had to be, because we have all of this bombarding coming in from all around the world while we're creating this wonderfully unique version of the game. And don't ever apologize for what we are or what we aren't, and certainly just don't apologize for American soccer. And not that you do or anybody necessarily listening does, but I have heard it before. Yeah, we're different. Yeah, we're unique. We have taken this beautiful game that the world plays, and we have made our own version of it, but we haven't bastardized it. All right. We haven't done things to it that make it unrecognizable, other than it's American. And I love the fact that we have done that. We've Americanized our version of the beautiful game here. And I think we've created something really unique.
Yeah. And you literally took the words right out of my mouth, because I was going to say it's more just being unapologetically you, which is so funny because we preach that to all these generations now. And I always tell my daughter that, with all the pressures and the outside things in the world, but really that's what the soccer landscape is too, is like, you don't have to apologize for what we are. It's a different version, and we don't have to try to be something that we're not. It doesn't mean you can't strive to make advances in certain areas of the popularity of the game and the quality of the competition and the stadiums and the fan base and all that kind of stuff. You want to grow the game. We all do, but don't apologize for what you are. And you can always strive to be better. I think that's sort of a good way to just summarize what American soccer is now.
Yeah. And I think it stems from this insecurity that we have and this inferiority complex that we talk about. And I think it's understandable. I think it's human nature, especially in a country and culture where soccer isn't king, right? So I was talking with someone last night at dinner about, again, way back in the 1900s when I was running around and how different it was, and how, we were looked down on as soccer people and soccer players. And that's not the case anymore. I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, and they look at soccer like any other sport. It is just part of their sports palette. And, the FIFA game changed the game, literally changed the game in terms of the video game and the way that people think about it. Obviously, the amount of TV and the amount of streaming that you're able to watch. A young person today, has the whether it's their football team, American football team, and then they'll go and they'll watch Chelsea play, and they'll know Messi and all this kind of stuff, and that's a marked change. And then they have their domestic affiliations and all that kind of stuff. And I love that we've come so far. And I also love that there are kids that wake up today and have no idea how different it was, and how challenging and bad it was. And it's not that long when you really look at it, but they have no concept. And I don't need them to say thank you or anything like that. But a lot of people, including yourself and so many others, men and women, have worked very, very hard to get us where we are with all of those different wonderful advantages that we have. And that's great. That, for me, that's success, that there is a generation right now that has it so much better than we ever did. And, I think that applies to parents out there. You want your kids to have it better than you did and do the things to make it better. And I think from a soccer perspective, a lot of us can be incredibly proud that we have done that. And it's got to continue on, because you got to instill that and plant that seed in that next generation that, hey, now it's your responsibility to take it to the next level.
Well, speaking of not, it wasn't that long ago type of moments. And I think, one of your favorite people on the planet is JP Dellacamera.
Yeah.
I remember him talking about, I believe it was in 99 in the Rose Bowl, sold out, and him calling that women's national team game, and it was on tape delay.
Yeah.
It wasn't even shown live. And then now we have this Women's World Cup this summer coming up, dual countries in New Zealand and Australia, which I know you'll be a part of. But like, you talk about the advancement of all of soccer, let alone the women's game. What do you just give me your snippet of a preview of the Women's World Cup? And I know you had Allie Wagner on the other day, and she's got all sorts of fabulous things going on, but what's your sort of snippet of the upcoming Women's World Cup and where the U.S. women sort of sit in their usual dominance, but maybe not so much anymore with everybody catching up?
I mean, look, men's, women's, co-ed, naked, doesn't matter. I'm going to talk about it. I'm there and I love it. And World Cups, I've done so many now and I love it. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's men's or women's. So this summer, obviously we're going down to Australia and New Zealand. And so I'm jacked up for it for a number of different reasons, not the least of which our women's team gets the opportunity to go for 3 World Cups in a row, something that has never been done, unprecedented, men's or women's. And, they just continue to make history and do big, bold things on and off the field. Let's be honest, and incredible superstars on and off the field. But, from a bigger perspective, this is also going to be the biggest World Cup with 32 teams. And so you have debutantes all over the board coming in.
Do you love those? Do you love that or not? Like, I love the expansion of it for sure in the women's game, the energy from these teams that otherwise never would have made it. I love that.
It is. And, while you're going to get some lopsided results, and that's just kind of the price you have to pay. But you're rewarded, and the long-term benefit of having these individual players and these teams and these countries celebrate their team at a World Cup. I mean, we remember, the Thailand result from last World Cup, or even, the Panama in the a couple World Cups ago. That moment when you put your hand over your heart and you're wearing that jersey and you're walking out on the field and the camera shows your team, if you're not on the team, if you're just watching it at home, or if you're in the stadium and you're representing your country. And, tears are streaming down people's eyes. It doesn't matter ultimately about the score. Yes, it's a competition. So I'm all for it. I love it. I hope what it does is it plants that seed, and it gives not just the individual players that experience, but it brings it home to say, hey, this is something that is worthy of your time and ultimately is worthy of the resources being put into it. Because as you know, when it comes to the U.S., many, many years ago, many decades ago, we focused and made it a priority, so much so that we had legislation and we made women's sports a priority and did the things to give it the equity and the equality that it deserves. And we reaped the benefits for a number of decades in a number of different sports, but in particular, when it comes to the women's game in soccer. And the rest of the world has started to catch up. And even with just minimal amount of resources, you can make incredible strides. But the reality is, even today, there's a handful of teams that the U.S. actually is competitive against. And it's not that they can't lose on the day, but the reality is that you're talking about your France, your England, your Germany's, when it comes to Canada, the defending Olympic champions. So it's the usual suspects around. And for Vlatko Andonovski, the head coach of the women's team, this is pressure, because it's almost not fair. If you don't win it, it's kind of a failure, right? And
yes,
and it's not easy, but he's also, he's got the keys to, the best and fastest car in the race. And so it's up to him to make sure that it drives and it purrs and it does what it needs to do. And, we saw the loss of Mal Swanson there. That's a problem, but they got incredible depth. And, next woman up, and Trinity Rodman and Sophia Smith and all these, these two types of players. So I'm excited about it. I can't wait to go down there. Our set's going to be right down in Sydney, right in front of the Opera House and the Botanical Gardens and all that kind of stuff. So we'll have that iconic thing. And again, we'll rev it up. We did it a couple months ago in Qatar, and, Fox will give you your day in, day out dose of not just the U.S. team, but everything that's going on with this expanded. And therefore, I think it's going to be the greatest Women's World Cup we've ever seen.
What's the favorite part of your job? Just to wrap up this segment of the show, what's the favorite part of and I don't even know if I can call it a job. And that's what I tell people all the time. When you get to do what you get to do, like it's kind of like a privilege,
I am incredibly privileged. Don't think for a second that I don't know how privileged I am. And they can they can, pry it out of my cold, dead, redheaded hands. Okay.
There's
And they're
plenty of
coming,
people
believe me.
coming in for
They're all
these
coming.
days.
They're all coming. All you youngins are coming. So bring it. But I mean, the best part of my job is that I get to talk about soccer. I haven't kicked a ball now in decades, and I still make a living talking about the game that I love. The moment that I love the most is right before that red light turns on. And, I'm on television, and anything can happen on live television. And I love, I still get butterflies in the best sense. I've learned to harness those and use them to my advantage. And I don't feel that I'm prepared or ready if I don't get those butterflies. And then off we go. And, talking about the game and mixing it up and debating and opinions and all that kind of stuff. We don't have enough of that when it comes to the men's or women's side, when it comes to our game. So the more that we can do that, the best. And people are going to agree with you. People aren't. People are going to call you names. And, in this day and age where everybody has a platform, everybody has a megaphone, that's fine. Bring it on. That's fine. I get called things to my face and online and behind my back and in texts and in emails and back in the, walking down the street or whatever. It comes with the gig, but I love it. And I'm so, like I said, incredibly lucky and fortunate to be able to have this gig. And I want to keep doing it, and I can get better. I certainly have grown and gotten better, but I still make mistakes, and I can certainly do better.
Well, I always say, like, you think after you do it for a while, you're like, gosh, why am I still sweating? Like right before the camera goes on, why am I sweating? But I'm always kind of like, that must be part of it though. It's that adrenaline, it's that excitement, it's that positive nervousness, like when you said like that red light goes on and the ball's about to kick off and you're doing the first thing, whether it's calling a game or whether it's the studio stuff. Like, I feel like that's a positive energy. Like the day I'm not sweating anymore when the whistle blows, it's a negative.
Well, I know you're a junkie for it, and I know that you love it. And I love working with people that are like that, because something you also know, if you're in this industry for any period of time, is that you'll see people that are just coming through, and they're passing through. They're using it as a way station until something better comes along. And okay, you can get away with that for a little bit, but eventually it will, I think, manifest itself in your performance. And I think you're cheating yourself, and I think you're cheating the viewer. And I don't want to be associated and around and working with people like that. I want to be with people that are junkies, that love it. And this is what they want to do. And what's really actually been heartening for me to see is that there's a whole nother generation that's coming up that looks at soccer and soccer broadcasting and soccer media and all that kind of stuff as that's what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And that's specifically what they want to do. And, the late, great Grant Wall, was rightfully so this icon and this pillar, and he did other sports, but he was kind of ahead of his time in that he really focused and wanted to be about soccer. And now I think he has influenced, and a lot of people have influenced this whole generation to say, yeah, there's American football and all that, but this is what I want to do. And, I work with, and John Strong, he's another one that from an early age, he recognized that, yeah, I could, get more famous, or I could make more money, and I could do these other things, but this is what I want to do. And that, to me, that's the ideal. Working with people that are good at what they do, that want to get better and don't want to do anything else. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, you hit it on the head too, just saying like I always feel like I owe it to the people that we're broadcasting to put everything into it. And when you go into a game, it's just like as an athlete, like just like as a broadcast, if you maybe didn't feel like you prepped as well that week as you should have, or who knows, life happens, things come up. But at the end of the day, it's all about, giving the teams the respect that they deserve. Yeah. And making sure that you follow through on the broadcast and really diving in. And that's actually one of the other reasons I love the Women's World Cup is there is nothing I love more than those in-depth pieces and those stories and those things that you find out, especially about some of these countries where maybe some of those countries, they don't want women playing soccer. Yeah. We're talking about funding, and some of these places trying to get cleats and jerseys and, just the most basic things of just being able to play the game. And then they show up and they see that anthem and they hear it, and like they get off the bus and they're jamming to the music, and there's just an energy about it. And it truly is the sport that brings everybody together. And I think we saw that in Qatar, and we're going to see it with New Zealand and Australia with the Women's World Cup as well.
Can't wait. I can't wait. And, to your point, we will tell those stories, either actually individual players or teams. And the disparity is going to be very, very obvious. And look, our women have fought tooth and nail and deserve everything that they have gotten. But I think there's going to also be a stark contrast between everything and all the resources that our women have, individually and collectively, relative to some of these teams. And that's not saying that our women should pity them or anything like that. They've done a lot of things to help bring everybody up, not the least of which is now we have a 32 team Women's World Cup, and hopefully these types of things will force people to put more resources. But be careful, because we have had that head start. And when it comes to Kate Margrath over there at US Soccer, she's got to be thinking every day, how do we maintain the distance? Because they're coming and they already have an existing infrastructure, and they are coming oftentimes from cultures where soccer is king. And, we've seen what's happened in England, in England, for example, or in Spain with these incredible crowds that they have. And, we saw a couple of weeks ago with the baseball thing, people want to lean in and cheer and be proud of their country. The sport sometimes is irrelevant, and especially in an age where so much divides us, this is something that brings people together. And so, when it's the women's teams in some of these countries where traditionally they haven't gotten the resources or they've been ignored, I think there's a whole generation right now that says, this is my team, and I want to cheer for this team. And whether it's, like I said, men's, women's, or co-ed naked, people get into it. And so here's hoping that this World Cup has the effect of not only just being a great World Cup from a competitive standpoint, but also making all these teams in these countries realize that this is worth putting money into. And not because it's a charity, because that is the kiss of death. Women's soccer cannot be treated as a charity, but because it's good business going forward. And we're seeing that when it comes to NWSL and so many other things that are happening.
Well, we'll wrap it there. We got another awesome game coming up. I know we kind of did full circle here, but Detroit City FC, Minnesota United, US Open Cup, Tuesday the 25th in Detroit. I urge you all to tune in, because that's going to be an awesome game, and everybody comes to play in those matches. So I thank you for taking the time to join me, and of course, just talk all things soccer, preview the Women's World Cup. I mean, we could go on for another couple hours, but I know you're probably doing 75 other podcasts today, so I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. And like I said, I love the work that you do, and I love that we've gotten to know each other and work with each other over the years. And I wish you the best of luck going forward. My best to you, to all the folks up there in Minnesota and around the country, and of course to your family.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexi. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, tune in next week after Minnesota United takes on Seattle Sounders. And then, of course, maybe even after the US Open Cup game against Detroit City FC. Thanks, everybody.